Hi, this is Eddie Muller. I'm here with Ann Hawkins, Director of Communications for the Film Noir Foundation. We are about to do another installment of Ask Eddie and Ann and Charlotte, who I see there. I see the peak of one ear poking up there. So that's not a pillow, that's an actual living thing right there.
It is an actual living thing.
Okay, very good. Hello, Charlotte. No response. Okay.
No response.
Okay, Ann, I'm just going to start us off by saying that this has been a great month. But before we get into that, please bring us up to date on the matching donation drive that was happening.
Yeah, so we're through July now, and I just wanted to thank everyone who donated. I'm really, really happy with the response and was really glad that we could help honor Elizabeth. I've been just really moved that people have contributed, and it was just
it's wonderful. Elizabeth Rachel Heavey Brierly, who was an administrator of the Femme Fatales of Classic Film Noir Facebook page, right? And her friend and colleague Pete, who only goes by Pete or Peter, extended this fabulous matching donation thing of he would match $1,000 if we took in $1,000 during the month of July, which I can safely say did happen. So thank you very, very much, Peter, and everybody should go over and join that site as well. That was the Femme Fatales of Classic Noir, or the Femme Fatales of Film Noir.
Right.
So many thanks again. Has it been a good month for you, Ann?
It's been a great month. I went and saw the first punk show they've ever had at Stern Grove yesterday. Me and my ex-BF. And we had a great time. The Avengers were the opening act, and they were awesome. And then it was X, who I'd realized I had never seen live before, which really surprised me. And it was fantastic. And it was a huge crowd.
And this was the original X lineup with John Doe and Exene and DJ Billy Zoom and DJ Bonebreak. And wow. Yeah, I always loved X. And of course, the Avengers were... Man, they're my contemporaries. I mean, Penelope went to the San Francisco Art Institute when I was there, and Greg, the guitarist, is a Noir City regular in San Francisco. So that is pretty great. Was it weird being at a outdoors? I guess it isn't as weird as being indoors. It's strange. Punk rock outdoors is kind of weird. What was that like?
Yeah, I know. It is different because that's really kind of not the venue, but it was cool because the guy that was introducing everything was saying that they really wanted to do something for this audience since all the clubs have been closed for, a year and a half. And this was actually the first time X played a concert since the shutdown, and they had released a new album right before the shutdown. So they hadn't been able to tour on the album. And it was just kind of unusual, but it was really good, and everybody was super enthusiastic. And but it isn't typically what you see at an outdoor concert, but it was awesome.
Right. If there are people listening to us who are fans of punk rock, in an upcoming issue of the Noir City magazine, my friend Chris D., who was the songwriter and lead singer for two punk bands, the Flesh Eaters and the Divine Horsemen, has written a really wonderful sort of memoir of his growing up and how being a cinephile fueled him to become a punk rocker as well. And he discusses and it's, the influence that noir had on his music. And he's very good friends with John Doe, and those guys played many concerts together. In fact, that's where I first saw Chris, was with the Flesh Eaters on the bill with X at a show years ago in San Francisco. So anyway, that's fun. It was It was a great month. This may have been the best month of my professional life, to be honest with you.
Wow, why?
The release of the revised and expanded Dark City has been an unqualified success. My editor called on the day the book became available, July 20th, to say that it was already going to a second printing,
Yeah.
which is fantastic. We had a huge reaction to the screening of Los Tallos Amargos on TCM when I showed it on Noir Alley. I would dare say that might have been the best reception any movie has gotten that I've shown on Noir Alley.
I mean, I saw a lot on social media. Like, I was retweeting a lot of stuff because people just seemed so enthusiastic about it, and it made me very happy to see that response.
Yes,
especially for a foreign film.
Well, precisely, and that's why I think it's a safe bet that we'll be showing more of them in the future. I mean, I have 2 more planned for this year, 2 more foreign language films before the end of 2021, and then I think we'll see that become not common, but I will spice it up in the programming in 2022, maybe 6 or 8 foreign language films in the mix, or at least foreign films, because I count British films as being foreign films, even though they're in the same language. So that will be great. And just everything was really really great. There's other stuff that I'm forgetting right now that was also great that happened this month. And the whole neo-noir thing on TCM was extremely successful. And, I had a lot of fun doing that with Ben Mankiewicz, and we'll see what becomes of that. I noticed a lot of people posting on social media that they wanted that to become a regular thing, which I don't think will happen, but I would be surprised if there wasn't a second edition of that next year.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised either, because I saw a lot on Twitter and on Facebook about it, and people were really pumped up about it. And it was sort of nice to see both the neo-noirs and the foreign noirs doing really well, because I think there's sort of, I think people tend to think, oh, well, everybody who watches TCM is just going to watch classic films. And sometimes there's a lot of outcry when they go out of the box a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
So it was really good to see such positive responses to both those things, because I think there's a lot of room in their programming to be doing, more foreign films and newer stuff, and that, we also, I mean, we're really at this point, something done in the 70s really is a classic. I mean, we're.
Yes. There's absolutely no question about that now. And this series kind of proved that, because there were a few scattered people who said, I don't really want to watch these films because they're too new or something. But that's so bizarre to me, because they aren't, Chinatown will be coming up on its 50th anniversary in two or 3 years, That's, when do you stop saying that's a new movie and start discussing it as a classic film? That's what it is. So, but the reaction was extremely positive, and although I'm sure there were a number of people who just didn't watch Los Tallos Amargos because they didn't want to read subtitles, the overwhelming reaction on social media was so positive. And as you know, people will take to social media with a negative response. They will do that on occasion. So the fact that there was so little of that was a great sign. Anyway, let's get to our questions. These, and we've changed things up a little, because Anne does have these messengered over to me, and they are kept in a mayonnaise jar on Funkin' Wagnall's porch until I retrieve them mere moments before we go on the air here. So, and like last time, I'll pop in to read a few of these as we go along. But Anne, kick us off.
Okay, this is from Ned. Have there been any updates on an earlier mention of magazine-style reprints of Noir City e-magazine?
Oh, funny you should mention that. That is now available. Ta-da! Oh, look at the ring light casting a. Yes, as you are watching this, good people, you could actually open another window on your laptop computer and go to the page, the Noir City Mag on Twitter. It's at Noir City Mag. Or you can go to Amazon and just type in Noir City Magazine, and you can get this fabulous publication. I'm not very good at doing the Vanna White thing, but it is gorgeous. It just turned out. Look at this. Look at this.
It's beautiful.
That's Farron Nime's wonderful profile of Virginia Gray, and there's a wonderful piece in here on Mike Hodges. An interview with Mike Hodges, the director of Get Carter, Pulp, and Croupier. Anyway, we finally did this, and just to explain, the magazine was created as a premium for people who joined the Film Noir Foundation. It began as a newsletter and expanded into this massive magazine, but it was always an e-magazine delivered digitally, downloadable, because we didn't want to get into all the costs of printing and shipping a magazine and all this, and that's not what we do. But we did decide to avail ourselves of this service that Amazon provides. People know that 9 times out of 10 I'm bad mouthing Amazon. I don't want you to buy my book on Amazon. I want you to go to Larry Edmonds' bookstore or your local bookseller to get the book. But this is a different thing because this can be printed on demand. So there is no inventory. And I have to tell you, I hesitated to do this for so long because I was afraid the quality would be a little slipshod, but it's absolutely gorgeous. I mean, you have a copy, right?
Yes, I do, which I left over there, so I can't grab it. I forgot to bring it over. I'm glad you had yours handy.
But it's fantastic. And it's everything that we produce. People who buy the Noir City Annual that we put out every year, that is culled from the best stuff that appeared in the magazine, but it doesn't have the reviews. It doesn't have everything. So this is a standalone publication now. It is $14.99 a copy. This is a, deluxe, almost 90 pages in this magazine. And you get it separately. You do not have to donate to the Film Noir Foundation in order to receive you just buy it. You just say, I want to buy this magazine. And that's how that works. So yes, now we have a print edition. I'm very proud of it.
And just so people know, if you sign up on our email list and donate $20 or more to the Film Noir Foundation, we still send you the digital edition of Noir City Magazine. And you don't have to pay anything extra for that. That comes with the donation. And but for people who want to buy the print edition as they come out, sorry, Charlotte.
She's going to go get that new print edition. She loves it so much. She's going to go get it and
drag it over. So sorry. And so probably like about 2 weeks after we send out the digital version of the magazine, then the print edition will be available from Amazon, and you can pay $14.95 to get it. And the print does look really good. Like, I was surprised. I didn't think it was that good.
It really looks spectacular. I mean, it's beautiful, perfect binding. Look at the back cover.
Plus, I really love the back cover.
It's fantastic. So, I mean, there are advantages to the digital edition because it has hyperlinks in it that take you to film clips and all kinds of stuff that you can't get in the print edition. But, for people who like to hold things in their hands and take it with them and read it, it's sensational. So a tip of the cap to, the editor-in-chief, Vince Keenan, and art director, Michael Cronenberg. They really whipped this whole thing into shape. And you can get it right now, even as we speak.
Yeah, and just to clarify also, because people have asked about this, in terms of our back issues will not be available in a print edition, just so people know. So
correct.
This is starting with this edition going forward. You can get a print edition, but we won't be doing that. And also, we will still continue to do the annual every year as well,
Yes.
for those of you who want a book, and with the really beautiful covers that we always have. So
yes. So this is issue number 31 in the history of Noir City magazine. And as soon as issue number 32 comes out, this will be a back issue that will be available in print.
correct.
You can always get this. But issues 1 to 30 are only available as digital downloads. And you can get those. You know, they're $5.99 and you can download back issues. You just won't get them printed. That was too much of a kerfuffle for us to arrange all of that with Amazon. So anyway, there you go. Okay. So I hope people will buy it.
Yeah, it really does look beautiful. And I love the back cover. That just was so awesome. It was just so exciting to get one additional thing on the print issues that you have a pretty back cover. And this is from Antoinette. Will there be a Northern California equivalent to the summer weekend of noir set that was at Los Angeles? What other Northern California events might you have planned?
At this moment, I'm just going to say there will definitely be an event. It's either going to be the next Noir City Festival in January, and if we're getting closer on that, but if for some unforeseen reason that doesn't happen, then I will do something else. I will go to a plan B, either at another venue or something, or a shorter thing, or a one-off or something, to meet the demand that folks have for this to return to Northern California. We will be back. Thank you, Antoinette, for asking. We will be back. Okay, I'm gonna read a question for you now. I'm wondering if you've seen the new movie Zola. See, this is why I'm reading this one to you, Ann, because you're better at keeping up with the new movies than I am. The new movie Zola from 2020. I saw the movie last week, and I am debating if it's a straight-ahead noir or not. It has a lot of noirish features that include a road trip, women threatened or put into bad circumstances, gun violence, etc. Gee, sounds right up my alley. The film was directed by a gal named Yannixa Bravo. I think it's her first feature film. It's interesting because the plot originated as a series of Twitter tweets that went viral and picked up a lot of viewers. I find it interesting that the plot came from tweets and not a book. I guess this is the new world we are now facing in motion pictures. I don't think one film makes a new world, but I can definitely see that this is something of a landmark. Have you seen the film?
I have not seen the film, but I would like to point out, yes, there has been a film already that was taken from a series of tweets called You May Be the Killer, which I highly, highly, highly recommend. It's a horror film with a lot of humor to it. And the premise basically is this guy is running a summer camp, and it opens up with him calling his friend Chuck, who's a woman that works at a comic store, to ask him to help her because there's like this maniac on the loose killing all his camp counselors, and she's like a big horror fan. So he's like,
damn, this is so right up your alley.
It really is. And yes, I would be that person that my friends would call if they were in that situation. But the interesting thing was I was listening to, and it was such a clever story, and I was listening to the commentary, and they said, and that's what happened. These two authors were going back and forth sort of in a similar premise in their tweets, pretending to be like the two people. And they're published authors. I mean, so that is actually where, and they thought these two guys thought it was so brilliant. They contacted them, were like, can we turn this into a movie?
Right.
So,
right. No, it's very interesting how these new technologies are being adapted, or they make writers adapt, because, you know, so many people say, you know, when you write mystery fiction, it's like, oh my God, you know, the cell phones have killed it, because you know, you always are connected. You're never not without a phone, of course. And have you seen Cellular? That was a pretty cool movie where it was all about the guy overhearing the kidnapping, and then he had to keep juice. He had to keep trying to find ways to get juice in the phone so he didn't lose the connection. That was actually a pretty good movie. What was the other one I was going to mention? That, you know, this technology is so fascinating. Like the movie that was shot entirely on iPhones in Disneyland, Escape to Tomorrowland or something. Yeah. I mean, that was a fascinating film that this new technology allowed them to, you know, talk about subversive, going into Disney World and shooting a movie without Disney's knowledge.
Yeah.
Is phenomenal, if you ask me. And I enjoyed the movie as well. But unfortunately, Dan, neither of us have seen Zola. So that's going on our list of to be watched. And then we will reconnoiter, and on a future episode, we'll tell Dan what we think of Zola. Thank you for the tip.
And this is from Dwayne. Enjoyed meeting you at the Music Box Theater in Chicago for Noir City 2019. What is the story on the cab driver from The Big Sleep, Joy Barlow? How was she picked for The Big Sleep? She was kind of saucy in it. Why wasn't she in more movies?
Well, bad agent would be number one answer, I guess. I mean, how she was picked for it was Howard Hawks. You know, he had a knack for finding interesting women, Hawksian women. You know, they're always a little masculine, but saucy. That's the whole thing of the Hawks woman. You know, and there's so many of them in The Big Sleep, right? In addition to Lauren Bacall and Martha Vickers. You know, Sonia Darren is great, and Dorothy Malone is the world's most famous bookstore clerk, is great, and here's Joy Barlow, and yeah, she has that great line where she says, if you ever need a ride or something, you know, here's my number, call me anytime, and he says day and night, and she goes, night's better, I work days. That's a, you know, that's a pretty great little throwaway line. I don't know that much about her. I know she was a chorus girl. She was was an Earl Carroll chorus girl, and that she grew up in LA. So she was an Angelino. And I think she made a lot of Westerns and kind of B musicals and stuff. You know, it's funny, in The Big Sleep, she kind of reminds me, I remember thinking, is that Shirley Temple? Because she looks kind of like a grown-up Shirley Temple in the movie. And I thought that was kind of, but it's not, obviously. It's Joy Barlow. But I don't think she had a very long career. It didn't go much longer after, well, maybe like eight years or something more after The Big Sleep. But like a lot of actresses like that, you know, guys want to marry a movie actress, and then they get out of the business, and they just are happily married. So I think that's what happened to her.
Okay, and this is from Robin. What is the story about the movie Caught from 1949? I recently watched it for the first time. I thought it was a beautifully constructed film with some really interesting and unique camera work. The first 3 quarters of the film was great. The last quarter, especially the ending, was horrible. I know studios sometimes change films and create scenes and endings that are completely out of character and can be disjointed. Is it possible Max Ophuls' film was hijacked somehow?
Yeah, I know what Robin is talking about. It, you know, there's the ending of the film with the pinball machines, and then Robert. Well, I shouldn't give away spoilers, you know. And then there's like a bit more that's really bad.
Yeah.
I believe those last couple of scenes may have been directed by somebody else. I don't have anything to confirm this, but I do know that John Barry and Robert Aldrich both did something on this movie. They directed some part of this movie. John Barry did the whole thing at the charm school. All the montage of Barbara Bel Geddes going to the charm school. That's John Barry. Because I guess Max Ophuls was sick at that point or something, but I don't really know what the story is with that. I'm sorry to say. I know that's an Enterprise film, which means John Garfield was sort of the executive producer of the film, and Enterprise was an independent company. Now I can all but guarantee you that they would have fought to keep whatever ending they originally had, but you know, it was distributed through MGM, so MGM may have put its foot down and said the only way we're releasing this is by changing something about the ending. You know, if memory serves, at the end of that film, Barbara Bel Geddes is going to have Smith Ulrich's baby.
Yeah.
Right. So there may have been some discussion about how that was going to be treated at the end of the movie. They, if they were being so daring as to suggest that she's not going to have his baby, that is not going to get past the powers that be at MGM. Yeah. And it's just weird because that whole ending of the film is so clearly messed up. Like the last close-up of Barbara Bel Geddes is, they push into a tighter shot of her face because it's clearly a wider shot, and they optically made it a close-up of her. There's something else in the frame that's happening that might explain what the ending was supposed to be. But I agree with this assessment. I think the ending it's too bad that it got screwed up. I wish I knew how it got screwed up. Subject for further research.
Yeah, because I definitely felt that when I watched it, because it was going along, it was really great, and I was like, ew. So
yeah, they kind of messed, and that's James Mason's first American movie, and and of course Max Ophuls would go on to direct The Reckless Moment, which I think is better. It's a better film than Caught, as much as I like Caught, and but Caught is hamstrung by that ending. The Reckless Moment is great. The whole thing is great, and James Mason again, and he is great. Okay, I'm gonna. Here we go. In a 1991 French documentary about the making of his film *The Double Life of Veronique*, Krzysztof Kieslowski described the difficulty he had working under censorship limitations in communist Poland. We had to find ways to make the audience understand us, but not the censors. Could have been Dalton Trumbo talking. Eddie has repeatedly described the Production Code Administration as having the same effect on filmmakers in America during the classic noir era. Consequences in Poland, of course, were severe. Films could be shelved for years before their release or banned outright. Are there any examples where PCA objections forced producers to halt a film before or during production or prevented a film from being released? I'm not exactly sure. It's fairly easy to track the history of these things for specific films at the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences Library, the Margaret Herrick Library, because they always have the PCA reports on the films. And I can't tell you how many of those come back saying this film cannot be approved, this script will not be approved in this form. Now, we're always going into that library looking for films that have been made. I don't know what film to go in and ask for that wasn't made because of those objections. There may be dozens of them. But I find it kind of hard to believe that was the case. If the studio wanted to make the film, they would find a way to make the film. And of course, the penalties were not that severe in the States as they would be in Poland, or as I mentioned when I introduced Los Tallos and Margos last week, in Argentina, they were making films under the Perón dictatorship, and if he didn't like you, your career was over, right? I mean, that's as simple as it could possibly be. So that's a very good question that I don't actually have an answer for. So again, a subject for further research. Maybe folks watching know a history of something, but I don't recall like Hitchcock ever shelving a film or scrapping a film because of the production code saying you can't do it. And he was the one who was constantly. I highly recommend John Bilheimer's book, Hitchcock and the Censors, because he gets into the whole history of every Hitchcock film made in this country and how it had to be approved by the production code office. And it's a very interesting insight into how they worked.
Yeah, and one of the things is always like, I love Preston Sturges. I mean, I think he's just a brilliant writer director. But there are times when I watch his films, I'm like, I do not understand how he got all the stuff past the censors. It's amazing to me what he got away with in his films. And I don't know if it's because he was so like, I don't know if it was just flying over their heads. I mean, like Miracle at Morgan's Creek is actually a satire of the Virgin Mary story. I mean,
yeah,
I was shocked, but I thought maybe they just didn't get it. I mean, he just always amazes me.
It's certainly it's certainly true in some cases, and that they just didn't get it.
Yeah.
Gay subtext in Hollywood movies just got right through, because nobody that worked in that office wanted to say they understood it.
Yeah.
Right? If you understood the gay subtext, what did that say about you?
Yeah.
I mean, that's how silly this whole thing could be, But I know exactly what you mean, and it is true that in some cases, certain people had an advantage. Certain studios, certain producers like Zanuck, they had an advantage because they were good friends with Joe Breen.
Yeah.
And they knew how to play the game and get stuff passed. And then the Breen office would pick on people that didn't invite them to their parties and, treat them like kings and everything. It's the same as it ever was,
Yeah.
I mean, there was a lot of schmoozing going on there to get stuff passed,
Okay, so, and that was Michael from Post Falls, Idaho, that submitted that last
Michael always submits a lot of interesting questions.
Yeah,
good on you, Michael.
This is from Paul from Crescent City. Friday, when you were hosting Neo-noir with Ben, the term hunky came up, and you seem not to know what it is. It is a term used for those digging coal or those immigrants that were family members who lived in the coal mining communities. A good movie reference is John Wayne starring in the film Pittsburgh, 1942. This was the nickname he used for Marlene Dietrich. The film also starred Randolph Scott. The 3 stars were also in the spoilers, which is 1942. A shout out to Anne and her cat Entourage. So that was just a factual. That wasn't really a question, but I wanted to read it because
I appreciate that, but I have to tell you, Anne, that moment. That was the first night of the Neo-noir series, and we were showing a very rare film called Warning Shot with David Jansen. And Sam Wanamaker says this in a scene. He says, "My father was a hunky," and honestly, I'm trying to find stuff to make Ben laugh when we're doing these things, and so I just kind of said, "What was with the hunky thing?" Because I know when I watch a film, and when I know that Ben and I are watching the same movie, I have Ben radar. Like, I know the stuff that Ben is going to go, what was that? I can make a joke about that. So I knew that he heard hunky and was like, what was that all about? So I just said it, what's the thing with hunky? And I got more letters on that than anything else I've ever said on TCM. I got schooled on hunky. And what was so funny was that I got tweets, emails, postings on Facebook, all this stuff. And what was so amusing about it was that none of these things matched. So people all had different definitions of what a hunky was. It's a Hungarian in America in a manual laboring job. And of course, all these derogatory terms apply to people who will work for less money than whatever other ethnic group was there first. That's basically how all ethnic slurs begin, right? And so, and some people even said, I can't believe that Eddie's never heard the term honky. Like, they thought he was saying a honky. Like, oh, brother. But I just thought that was hysterical that, man, I will probably never let a ethnic slur go by. I'm just going to let him go by in the future because you're going to get a lot of mail one way or the other. So, but I very much appreciate Paul providing that detailed definition of a hunky.
And also, I just kind of wanted to read it because I really like those two films and would like people to watch them.
There you go.
And this is from Joe from Rancho Palos Verdes. I was excited to see that you added Remember My Name to your Friday night neo-noir schedule, as I feel that Rudolph is one of the most underrated directors of his time. This begs the question, do you feel that another one of his films, Choose Me, is also noir? On first glance, it may appear not to be, but I feel that the originality of the Keith Carradine character does qualify it. What do you think?
Yeah, I definitely think, and the Noir City magazine, Vince Keenan did an extensive interview with Alan Rudolph several years ago, talking to him about his film noir influences that are readily apparent in Choose Me and in Remember My Name. And there's also, God, I'm drawing a blank now. It's the one he did with Ann Archer and Tom Berenger, that's set in the Pacific Northwest, and I can't remember the title.
I can't remember the name of it either.
The movie right now, but that's also a neo-noir film. And of course,
wait, is it Rain City?
No, it's called, it's something kind of romantic. But of course, there's also Trouble in Mind, which is like a complete homage to noir, with Chris Christopherson and Laurie Singer and Divine playing the heavy. Divine playing the Raymond Burr role in Trouble in Mind, which is a really, really terrific movie. I love the score to that film. Mark Isham, and then great songs by Marianne Faithfull.
By the way, the Rain City Diner is featured in that film. Which is why I was thinking Rain City.
All right. But yes, Alan Rudolph definitely noir informed his. And I also just want to say, I didn't really program Remember My Name. That was I'm not going to say it was serendipitous, because the programmers at TCM clearly knew what they were doing, and I didn't even realize that film was available. And so I was surprised when I saw the list, and that it was like a fourth bonus film that night that fit the theme. And I can't actually, I'm crediting the whole programming staff, because I don't know which programmer actually programmed it, whether it was Charlie or Scott or Stephanie or Millie. I don't know. But I'm glad they did, because it's a very, very interesting film that's kind of important for being like Before the Last Seduction or any of that. It was the first one to reconfigure noir with a female protagonist in like a revenge story, and it was really good. Alberta Hunter, great songs from Alberta Hunter on the soundtrack. Okay, me now. I rewatched Harper a few months ago and saw Eddie and Ben's commentary on the film last week. See, I told you that neo-noir series that people are watching. It's obvious that screenwriter William Goldman did not add the character of Lou Harper's ex-wife to the story just to give Paul Newman another attractive female to interact with. Goldman brought the ex-wife on stage so he could swipe a classic scene from Raymond Chandler's work. He is referring to how Harper shows up on his wife's doorstep in the middle of the night, which is kind of quoted from Farewell My Lovely / Murder My Sweet, where he escapes from the sanitarium and shows up at Ann Reardon's place. That is Doug in Silver Springs. I'm not going to deny that, Doug, but I'm going to say that scene exists in virtually 50% of all detective stories, whether the detective ends up at the ex-wife's house or the girlfriend that he's wooing right now. I mean, that scene happens always. That's just one of the classic staple scenes in detective fiction. It's almost mythic that the heroic wanderer returns from his odyssey to the woman who's going to nurse him back after the world has beaten him down. That's it. I mean, think of Chinatown, right? When he goes to the orange groves, and then there's that whole thing where he gets beaten up and all that, and then she comes to rescue him, and then, you know, all that stuff, and she takes the bandage off his nose, and oh, that's a nasty cut, you know, and then it goes immediately into a love scene. That to me was the best version of that scene ever done.
Yeah, and I think what I found way more interesting was the film with Humphrey Bogart, where you know which one it is. You've shown it at Noir City, but he has a really great relationship with his ex-wife. It's the one where I think he's become like a press agent, and
you mean The Harder They Fall?
The Harder They Fall. Thank you. I love his relationship with his ex-wife.
With Jan Sterling, right?
Oh, it's so awesome because.
Or are you?
No,
it's not The Harder They Fall. It's Deadline USA.
It's Deadline USA. Yeah.
And you're thinking of Kim Hunter, and they're getting a divorce, and he's trying to win her back. And yes, he comes in drunk, and there's that fabulous scene where she has the picture of her new beau all over the apartment, and he has to keep seeing it. Yeah, that's Richard Brooks. That was a brilliantly written scene. And that you're right. That relationship between them is just one of many great plot threads in that movie. And it's so satisfying at the end when, well, I don't want to give away spoilers, but their relationship plays out. It's beautifully done, and they're really good together, Bogart and Kim Hunter. Even though she seems like she's half his age, if not more than that. But man, they're good. They are good.
Yeah, and there's such a truth to it. It's like it doesn't feel like something cliched just, you know, because it's also sort of about how she's talking about his moral center and things too. I mean, so it's deep. It's like it's so much more realistic than you usually would see in that dynamic in a film.
Absolutely, you know? Because she's not angry.
No,
she's not angry with him. She just says, I know who you are. And we will never work together because you're married to the job, you know? And it is very deep because, you know, Bogart plays that character of like, I need somebody to be there for me when I come home, but then I don't need him any other time.
Right.
And that's really hard to build a relationship on that. And she is well aware of it, you know? Yeah. Because she's completely competent and talented on her own. You know, she has her own career and, you know, but she doesn't need that thing that Bogart needs, you know, which is exactly that thing I was just talking about, that very male thing of now I need, you know, the woman to heal me after the world has, you know, filled me with arrows and I've been beaten down. Only a woman can give that to a guy, you know, or another guy, you know, but I mean, that's a personal thing that has to build somebody back up like that. And I'm telling you, that is just a constant in detective fiction.
Yeah.
And the only reason, Doug, that I was joking that, you know, one more person for Paul Newman to, you know, one more babe that Paul Newman can act off of is that's how the movie was sold.
Yeah.
I mean, the trailer for Harper is hysterical because it's all about the women and they all talk right to the camera, like writing these MASH notes, not to Harper, but to Paul Newman. Like, oh my God, you know, he's so hot. And that was just absurd.
This is from Brian in Toronto. Thanks for showing Eddie Coyle. I have always seemed to miss it when it has been on. I love Peter Boyle, versatile and underrated actor. I love Chinatown as well and wondered where you ranked it against classic noirs. But is there anything about the film or cast you would change or disliked? My main issue is that the rationale for the secret nighttime discharges of water seemed odd and confusing part of the script that I never understood.
Okay. I love Peter Boyle too, but I hate his guts in the Friends of Eddie Coyle.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, just the most detestable character. No, I would change nothing about Chinatown, but I do find it interesting that the explanation that they shoehorned into the script is given by a cop that I actually knew one time. It's so funny. He's not an actor. A guy. The actor's name is Paul Jenkins, and he has this small role in Chinatown. He was a Bay Area guy who moved to LA. My sister was an actress at one point. She was in the Screen Actors Guild, and she did a thing with Paul Jenkins. That's why I know him. And so he turns up in Chinatown. He's the cop. He comes out. I talk to Yelbrand down at the department, and he says that, there's always a little runoff, and it always happens. I forget what the line is, but they give this cop the explanation for why the water is being dumped, which I don't have an issue with that at all. I can't recall right now if that's actually based on historical fact, but the idea of dumping stuff because it helps you business-wise is a time-honored American tradition, So I have no trouble believing it. I live in a town where I'll get in trouble if I say this, but there are certain toxic chemicals that were routinely dumped by the government here because they wouldn't get their next allotment of these chemicals if they had some in stock. So they would just dump this stuff into the bay so that they would continue to get what their normal requisition of these chemicals. So I have no doubt believing that you would dump water, in order to, as part of the diversion of the water, from the valley to the city. I just think that's completely believable. Doesn't wreck the film for me at all.
Okay. Where do espionage films like The Spy Who Came In From the Cold and The Naked Runner fall in the noir scale? Noir, neo-noir, not noir? That's from Patricia.
That's a good question. What do you think about that, Anne? Where do spy movies, I'll call them spy movies for lack of a better term, where do they fit?
I don't really consider spy movies noir. I think my exception to that might be some of the ones where someone's unintentionally caught up in spy stuff, like Ministry of Fear, I would consider a noir.
Yeah, all those Eric Ambler stories and Graham Greene stories, John le Carré stories, Len Deighton stories. Yeah, they're kind of adjacent. And I would consider them noir only if the point of the story was not the geopolitics of what's going on, but the psychological state of the protagonist who is living a double life.
Yeah.
To me, that's very noirish, So, there are films like The Kremlin Letter, another Paul Newman movie, that I think Paul Newman's in that, that sometimes get included on these lists of noir. But one thing that you kind of don't see in film noir is global politics, as a motivating factor. There are more stories of everyday people and who the stories could be transplanted anywhere in the world. The same, it's like The Postman Always Rings Twice. You can do that story anywhere in the world. It'll be different, but it can be the same story. Whereas, spy stories have to be, world powers are involved, and the motivations for these things are very, very different. But when you get down, here's a good example. Like, I don't know if we mentioned this last time, the movie, The Thief, with Ray Milland, where he plays the communist spy. is like that's a spy movie that is very, very noir. So,
yeah. Or Pick Up on South Street technically
yeah,
has like, the government and communists and all that stuff in it, but it's completely secondary to the characters in the
of Skip. Yeah, Skip, because Skip is the noir protagonist, and Skip and Candy make that film, and Mo make that film a noir, where if you took them out of it, it would just be, some government agent movie with the FBI looking for communists. It'd be, I was a communist for the FBI or something, something like that. But Fuller. Yeah. Are you waving the flag at me? Or when he gives them the big spiel and Widmark goes, "So what?" That's fantastic. Okay. This is from Bill. Okay, Bill. Bill just watched Obsession, aka The Hidden Room, with Robert Newton and the lovely Sally Gray. I concur. Phil Brown and Naughton Wayne as well, and really enjoyed the Hitchcock-like film. It was on Turner TCM just recently, and I was hoping Eddie or Ann would comment on it. It is really deserving of a Blu-ray release.
I agree. Yes, it is. I love that film. You showed it at Noir City, and God, it's such a great story. And I love the villain of the piece because he's like this upper class Brit, and he just
my favorite Robert Newton performance.
He's great in it because he's like, and because he's all like gentlemanly and stuff, and he's doing this really, really friggin' horrendous thing to someone while being like,
it's as freakishly sadistic and weird as anything in any noir film, and yet he plays it like, he's just a normal Brit. He's oh man. And Sally Gray really is. I wish she had made more movies. That's Edward Dmytryk. He put his time in exile in England to good use because he made that, as well as Christ in Concrete. But I will be showing The Hidden Room next year on Noir Alley.
Oh, awesome! It's got a very, very good dog.
One of the great dogs of noir. One of the greatest dogs, perhaps the greatest dog of noir, because he figures so intimately in the scheme of things. It's a great film, and I actually think it's one of Dmytryk's better films of that era. There's no point comparing it to Crossfire or something like that, but I think it compared to Murder My Sweet and Cornered and The Sniper and stuff like that, I'd say The Hidden Room is right there, and maybe even a little cut above those films.
I think it's a cut above. I mean, it's just a really excellent film. Who plays the inspector in that?
Is that Naughton Wayne? I think that's Naughton Wayne.
Is that Naughton Wayne? Yeah, because that's also a really great performance too.
Yeah.
But yes, 2 thumbs up, and yes, it should get a Blu-ray release.
And it's also one last note on that. It's also a really fun movie because the other man. I mean, the premise of this movie, if people haven't seen it, it's very much a Postman Always Rings Twice kind of setup, where the Robert Newton and his wife Sally Gray, she's having an affair with this American.
Yeah.
And he devises this incredibly devious scheme to make the American disappear.
Yeah.
Literally make him disappear.
Gone.
Which is
down to the last molecule.
You have to wonder if that film could have been made in Hollywood, because the murder plot is really grotesque.
Yeah.
And they may have, in the States, they may have just said, no way.
Well, plus the protagonist is an adulterer.
Yes. So precisely. But it's just so cleverly done. Anyway, I there you go. High praise indeed for The Hidden Room.
And this is from John. In Lonely Places, film noir beyond the city. What is your opinion on the book? The next time you are in Michigan, please bring some film noir to Grand Rapids. We are sadly lacking.
Well, it's a little more complicated than that. I can't just show up in Grand Rapids and have the noir with me. Takes a little planning. So if who wrote this?
This was John.
John, if you have a favorite vintage movie theater in Grand Rapids, send us a note and let us know what it is, because that's somewhat of a prerequisite for doing this kind of stuff. Anyway, yes, In Lonely Places, Imogen Sarah Smith, I highly recommend the book. It's fantastic. Imogen has a very, that was a very smart take on the genre, because it's all about noir films that aren't set in the city. And I just think the world of Imogen as a writer. She's incredibly insightful. She writes beautifully elegant prose. And I'm so happy that she's a regular contributor to the Noir City magazine. But I do highly recommend that book.
Yes. I know it's terrible because I haven't read it yet, which is kind of terrible since I know Imogen.
Well, that's why books are great. They're always there. They're there when you need them.
No. And this is from David. I don't know whether this has been addressed to death already or not, but I would be curious to know whether Eddie indulges much hard-boiled or noir fiction, that is, stories on the pages, and what are some of his preferred works or book recommendations?
Oh my God. Yes, the answer is yes. All of this behind me here, there are these plexiglass cases that you kind of can't see that are filled with paperback editions of everything that I love. There are 3 bookshelves over here that are filled mostly with hard-boiled fiction. There are 5 more bookcases in the other room. Yes, I read it all. And it's impossible for me to pick 1 or 2 books. I mean, I've done this on previous episodes. The writers, and then the one-offs that are really great. I'll tell you what I'll do. I will make a thing of like favorite novels, like I did of favorite noir films, and I'll post that sometime soon in answer to that question.
Okay. And go ahead.
Okay, I'm gonna ask you a question.
Sure.
I was curious if you have. This is from Dennis. I was curious if you have a picture setting preference for your television when watching a restored Blu-ray or something like Too Late for Tears. I love that most high-def sets today have picture options, right, where you can set these different things. And Dennis says he likes the warmer movies setting for public domain DVDs and such. Anne, what's your take on this?
I am opinionated about this. Oh, okay. So most TVs you buy now default to what's really a sports setting.
Yes.
Which is very frustrating for me when I'm visiting other people and we're watching a movie and it's like, so honestly, when I got my TV set, I basically like adjusted everything by hand until I had it what I felt was perfect. And that's what I watch kind of everything under because it's just a better setting. Yes. Because unless you really want to watch something like where you want it highly digital, which I really don't know what you would do unless like that is nice for sports stuff. I have to admit, like I saw, like if you're watching soccer or something like that, then yeah, but other than that, I mean, it looks like crap. And it's so funny when I'll watch something at somebody else's place and I've seen it before and it's like, wow, this really looks like terrible because yes, it's just wrong. But I think I even adjusted frame rate a little bit, honestly, when I did it, but like, yeah, because it was just like the first time I pulled it up and I just like grabbed, a Blu-ray or a DVD of, I think it was Sweet Smell of Success. and kind of geared down from there, and then sort of checked it against everything I watch, and it works fine.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Mine is set on the movie's setting, but you are absolutely right that high definition television was kind of created for sporting events, and it's the only, even that I think is almost too high def.
Yeah.
Like it gets freakish after a while. Like, you know, I don't want to think these guys are actually in the room with me. And it's high def in a way that life is not like that.
Exactly.
Life doesn't actually look like that, right? So it's not more real, right? I mean, because it doesn't look like that.
Yeah. And it's also really difficult when you're watching something because also it's like you're totally giving the middle finger to the cinematographer. I mean, someone like lit that.
Yeah, because you're messing with the work.
Right.
Oh, and you know, I have said this before, like this, there's actually a really dark side to this question that who was it? Dennis, right, was asking. And the dark side of this is, if young people grow up expecting to see everything in high def, they will never watch old movies because old movies look terrible in high definition. They look, when kids complain about, oh, the acting seems fake, wait till you see the sets in high definition and you realize that everything those artists did to make painted plywood look like the Queen's Palace had to do with what they knew it would look like on film.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I can fake this, or I can change this, or paint this a different color to get the desired effect on film. Then if it's processed through this high definition technology, it looks like paint on plywood, and you see all the artificiality of it, which is not a good thing, you know. So that's why it's very important, if you're going to leave Turner Classic Movies on all the time, to make sure you're doing it at a setting on the TV that is most advantageous to. Some people don't even know that they can change the aspect ratio on their TV. Like they have it set up for 16:9 and everything is stretched, and then they watch a movie that's, you know, in a 4:3 aspect ratio and it's stretched, and they're like, why does everybody look really fat in this movie, you know? Short and fat. And it's like, because you got to go in and change the setting. So that's as much of an answer as I can give, Dennis. But that was, thank you, Anne, for vehemently making that observation.
Okay, and this is from Robin. Before Fritz Lang immigrated to the U.S., his films spanned many genres such as horror, science fiction, and fantasy. And after he reached Hollywood, most of his films were either noirs or dramas. In The Big Heat, the hot coffee scene plus the Graham reveal when she rips off her bandage off her face struck me as a horror film moments. But they feel worse because this is noir, not horror. Do you have any comments on the role horror played in Lang's noirs besides expressionistic lighting? In the case of The Big Heat, Banyan's tragedies cause him to virtually become a monster, to be even more demonic than his enemies. Yet Banyan lives and ends the film saying, keep the coffee hot.
Okay, that's an interesting observation. I don't really see those elements of The Big Heat as being horror film. I mean, it was just, that's like, to me, that's like saying that the bandage on Nicholson's nose in Chinatown is like a horror element. I mean, it's a gross thing, but I don't relate it to horror. But you know, the reveal when she pulls it off and leans into the camera is just the obvious way to play that scene. I mean, that's just how. It's funny. I think every director would shoot that scene the same way as Fritz Lang did it, you know? And I would argue that, I might argue the semantics of that Banyan ends up as demonic as the crooks that he's after. I think the movie does have that as a lesson. that revenge, the quest for revenge, will cloud your thinking and your good sense. That's true, but I don't think of him at the end as Dirty Harry. He's Dirty Harry in the making, because he's going to go out there. Now he's back on the job and he's going to patrol. But I don't see the big heat in that horror way. There are plenty of noir horror films, that straddle that line, like Among the Living, Hangover Square, The Lodger. There's even, I could even argue that the film we were talking about, The Hidden Room, has elements of a horror film. It's really, really close to being a horror film.
I think because what he's planning is so horrific.
Yeah, exactly. So there is Sharon Knoll, who writes for the Noir City magazine, is writing a story about this for a future issue, like this fine line between horror and noir in a lot of these films. And some of those I just mentioned will be included, and I'm sure people know plenty of others. Certainly as the production code started to get lax, there were a lot more of these weird independent movies, like Dementia, Daughter of Horror, and Carnival of Souls. You might think that's kind of a noir film that is a horror film as well. Anyway, that's being a horror fan. Anne, do you have any movies that The Spiral Staircase? Would you consider that like borderline horror, or is that just a gothic?
No, I think that borderline's horror because it's a really classic stalker story. And really before that, obviously decades before that became an actual genre, but you can make a really strong argument. I mean, it's sort of like Black Christmas, if you've ever seen the original Black Christmas. Yes. I mean, it's a really similar kind of thing. And so, and the book is really great too, by the way. It's definitely worth checking out. And then, one of the things I was going to say, though, I mean, to me, I don't think anything that Big Heat is really as horrific as that some of the stuff in Anthony Mann's noirs, especially the one with, the one about the agricultural workers.
Yeah, Border Incident. The way George Murphy is killed in Border Incident, or in Raw Deal when Raymond Burr throws the flaming dessert on the woman. That's worse than the coffee in the Big Heat. It's just that it's Gloria Graham, so she makes it memorable.
She does. Yeah. And I think also that also gives her a really great motivation, the arc of her character. And I think that works with it. And then in terms of sort of noir / horror, I think Val Lewton has a lot of the films that straddle those two worlds. I mean, all his films are pretty noirish looking in the first place, but like Cat People has elements of both film noir and horror, as does actually Ghost Ship does too.
Yes,
of course he did the Woolrich. Yeah, and he did a Woolrich story, Leopard Man. I mean, that's definitely, and that has a really intense, really horror scene when the girl's trapped behind the graveyard, the walls of the graveyard, and something's coming after, and someone's trying to rescue her, and that is.
And it's very interesting in these noir horror hybrids. It really is great when there's a logical human explanation for what's going on, right? Or is it supernatural? Because Lewton straddles that a lot. Like in The Leopard Man, you don't really know if there's a supernatural explanation for what's going on, or if it's a killer just hacking people up. You don't actually know. Cat People is more of a fantasy horror kind of thing. But something like The Seventh Victim with these devil worshippers, everybody thinks of that as a horror film, and I think of it as completely a noir because it's just these nutty people who are devil worshippers. There's not a single supernatural thing in the movie.
No, I mean, they don't. I think of that too. And I think also, I mean, there's so many elements to that make it a noir as well. But one thing is, I mean, just because it's sort of like Midsommar, which a lot of people are like, I mean, he's classified a lot of as a horror film, but like unlike Hereditary's first film, nothing supernatural happens in Midsummer. These people believe this crap, but but there's no actual magic in the film. You know, it's really a cult, a film about a cult. You know,
right.
And getting sucked into.
You know, that's the thing. I mean, so many movies start out as like thrillers.
Yeah.
And then it depends, like, how horrific will it get?
Yeah.
Right. And if it gets horrific, then it's a horror. Then it becomes a horror film. If what befalls these people is like the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, then that's a horror film. If it just remains a thriller, you know, that doesn't get into the bloodletting and stuff, then I don't really, I don't see that necessarily as a horror film. So that's like why I make those distinctions. Anyway, okay. I think
it's me again. I think
it's you again. Question number
17, and this is from Kim. I have been binging your Ask Eddie YouTube videos. Thank you, and I've enjoyed them immensely. Thank you. And if anyone else wants to binge, go to YouTube, Noir City SF. All our previous episodes are up there.
Binge away.
Binge away, please. During one of them, you referenced meeting Hume Cronin and being very excited to talk with him. You stated you had hardly engaged with his wife, Jessica Tandy, because she hadn't made any noirs and you were thrilled to talk to Cronin. I remember a film Ms. Tandy made called A Woman's Vengeance, made in 1948 with Charles Boyer and Anne Blythe. Tandy methodically tries to ruin Boyer's after his wife dies because he chose to marry Blythe instead of her. Have you seen this movie, and would it make the noir cut?
That's who sent that in? Kim. Thanks, Kim. I have not seen that film.
So, I really want to see it now, though.
Yeah, now I have one to look for. So thank you very much, Kim. I mean, I've heard of the movie, but I have not seen it. You know, there are a lot of movies I haven't seen.
I know.
You got to leave something for your old age. But yeah, that was a good recollection of that story I told. It was just that I was torn when I was leaving the restaurant. It was this Greek restaurant on the Upper East Side, New York. And I was torn because I couldn't imagine leaving and not acknowledging them.
Yeah.
But I didn't want to bother them because it was a Valentine's Day dinner, right? That was what it was. So I kind of just abruptly turned around and said, you know, oh, Mr. Cronin, blah, blah, blah. And all I could think to say was to talk about brute force, because that's my thing, right? And also because I knew that nobody talks to Hume Cronin about his role in brute force. And so, and I, like a minute in, he kind of lit up, but I could see by Jessica Tandy's face, she was like, really? So that's why I didn't really engage her in the conversation as well. Cause I was, she's a good actress. Yeah. She can let you know when your time is up. Not to say that she was in any way rude, but I definitely felt the difference in temperature between the two of them. Okay. Here's one from, from Finland, from Lisaki. I guess that's Isaki or Lisaki or Lisakai, or you're going to have to tell us how to pronounce your name when you watch this on the live stream. That's amazing. Because I met guys from Finland years ago when I was in Czechoslovakia. Teemu, 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 and Raina were the two guys that I met. And we stayed in touch for years after that. And I also met a guy named Sven from Norway. Sven from Norway. I met him in the line at the DMV because he asked if he could borrow my car to take his driving test.
Wow.
And I loaned Sven my car. And then I'm thinking, like, this guy could just be the most clever thief ever, But I made him give me his wallet.
Yeah.
That's right. Give me your wallet and then you can have my car. And then he passed his driving test, and we became friends after that. Anyway, this is what Isaki says. The only reason I enjoy noir movies are aesthetics that are not present nowadays. Really? That's the only reason? Gosh. I noticed you occasionally wear hats. Is there a brand you can personally recommend that manufactures high quality hats? Do you know which hat brands were most commonly used in the noir films? Still look great and have passed the test of time. Okay. The hat is the Borsellino. Made in Italy. The Borsellino family actually popularized the fedora, and that is the hat that everybody was wearing in the 30s. Every movie star and gangster wanted a Borsellino hat. And if you are into the hats, there's a documentary film called Borsellino City that I actually appear in, that was made in Italy a few years ago, that is the whole history of the Borsellino and its effect on cinema and vice versa. Since you're in Finland, you're closer to Italy than we are, so Borsellinos might be easier to come by. They are not inexpensive, mind you, but they are the gold standard for men's hats. In America, it's the Stetson, I would say. I mean, there's a lot of, that's the brand.
Yes.
And it's kind of historically cool because of the transition from cowboy hats to urban hats. The Stetson made that transition. And so, they made great cowboy hats and they made great fedoras. If you're in San Francisco, go to Paul's Hat Works out on Geary Boulevard, because they will custom make you a hat. They did that for me. And that place has been around a long time, but it was eventually taken over by 4 young women who are the hat makers. So that's pretty cool. But there's plenty of other good hats out there. Anyway, that's my answer to that question from Finland. Thank you.
And this is Jeff from Brooklyn. How about a discussion on the music of film noir? What is the relationship between film noir music and the music in thrillers? And what is the relationship or connection to film noir and giallos?
Giallo. We had, again, we did have a story in the Noir City magazine on are giallo films from Italy, can they be considered noir? Boy, this fits right in with the whole horror movie thing, because that's what those giallos are. They're bloody thrillers. That's what they are. Because the Italians are very sanguinary cinema in Italy. They always like a little bloodletting in the film, even if it's otherwise just a thriller. Even their posters always have blood on them. Mm-hmm. Like all their noir movies from the classic era, like Human Desire, or the one I have up here, Tomorrow's Another Day, they have to have blood dripping. The poster art has to have it. It's so strange. Anyway, this is a big issue. I mean, music in these films, I don't really know how to even start answering that, except to say that it's different than what people think, because in the 40s, there's very little of music that people associate with noir was actually in the films, like the jazz that you start hearing in the 50s, the scores like Man with the Golden Arm and Sweet Smell of Success and Anatomy of a Murder and Odds Against Tomorrow, all those jazzy scores all came in the 50s. Before that, it's all orchestral scoring, everything in noir. And jazz was only used to indicate the underworld. Boy, Charlotte is just like she's a hog for love this week. Look at this cat. I'm going to have to go get Tizzy in a minute. I'm not going to do that. We will, I can't really answer this question. And the idea of how does the music in noir relate to music in thrillers, that's a tough call. I mean, obviously the composers of these classic scores worked in both genres. Bernard Herrmann, of course, is the classic example. He did some great noir scores, like On Dangerous Ground, and Hangover Square is probably his greatest. But then just did straight thrillers. Henry Mancini, with Touch of Evil and Experiment in Terror, and then he did all kinds of other stuff. So it's such a big issue that I can't get my hands around it. There, I'm just talking to fill time while Charlotte is putting on a show. That's the.
And I think the connection, with film noir and giallo is, I think there is some connection there, but it really depends heavily in who made the film and what the story is, because a really good example probably is Dario Argento and where he started. In terms of the first couple horror films he made were really much more, they were violent, but they were much more mysteries. And then he sort of like Bird with Crystal Plumage, and Cat o' Nine Tails, which has a really noir ending. And then he kind of transitioned more into some more supernatural stuff, but then really, but like, so like Tenebrae to me is the one that's closest to a noir out of his films. That one, which is actually a personal favorite. I was watching it yet again. Soundtrack, of course, is fantastic, and that would be like, that's something that.
And what's the film again?
Tenebrae.
Oh, Tenebrae, yeah.
So it's about a novelist who writes these highly violent stories, and he's in Rome. And John Saxon has that great hat.
Yes,
yes. Who's his publisher? And anyway, and there's this guy who's copycatting out of the books. So then there's like some debate about, and it's sort of also him kind of taking the piss out of people.
Well, I hate to say, there's so many of those giallo films that, which I guess the translation is yellow.
Right, because that's the color of the crime paperbacks.
Right, they had the yellow covers. So it's just interesting that it's noir in France and giallo, yellow in Italy, but they're not the same thing. But if you're like a movie fan and you like sex and violence in your movies, and you haven't seen these Italian films from the 60s
need to watch
and
these
70s,
Italian films.
You are really missing out, because that was where sex and violence lived in the 60s and 70s. So, and also I just got to make a pitch for Dario Argento, because I do not particularly like really violent things, but Argento, I think, is an incredible filmmaker, and and his use of color is amazing. The music that he does is incredible too. Goblin did a lot of his scores. Yes. So if you can tolerate a little bit, if you watch the earlier ones, they're not as violent. But like I said, I just don't know. He's great. I just felt like saying. But he is a masterful filmmaker, and I was very surprised and enthused to see that he is acting in this new film by Gaspar Noé that just debuted at the Cannes Film Festival, where he plays an old man, and I don't know, I can't remember the actress who plays his wife, but they're just in this apartment, and it's like the end of their lives. And Argento plays the lead character in the film. And it just sounded amazing, because Gaspar Noé is like, he takes it all the way. Yeah. I mean, he's like the outer edge of what I can tolerate on screen. But he too is such a master craftsman and has such incredible ideas that I can tolerate I don't even know what the word is to describe his movies, because I've seen more violence in his movies, but they're just so rough. Some of those, Irreversible is a hard film to watch, and Enter the Void, and I Stand Alone, and I haven't even seen the one about where everybody takes ecstasy or whatever and has a huge orgy. I haven't even seen that one. But I'm very intrigued by this movie, the title of which I can't remember. I'm sorry.
Yeah, and I'll probably want to see it. I haven't watched his other films because that's a bridge too far for me. Like I said, I just have kind of a limit, and it's like I don't want it in my head, you know. Well, and the problem is the better it's made, is much more affecting too. I mean, that's the thing.
Well, that's a weird dichotomy there, isn't it, Anne? Because the better made it is, the more I can tolerate it, but the more impact it has.
Yeah.
You know, it's like when really violent, horrible movies are kind of crappily made. I'm going to say something like I Spit on Your Grave, or The Hills. Sorry, Wes Craven, or The Hills Have Eyes, or something like that. It's like, ugh, this is even creepier, because you imagine maybe these people actually do this kind of stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, that's why the Texas Chainsaw Massacre was so terrifying, because is this somebody's home movies? I mean, then you realize Tobe Hooper really knew what he was doing when he made that film. But
and a great cinematographer.
It's very, very scary.
And a great set designer too. Just want to throw that in there.
Yes. But these Gaspar Noé films are extraordinary for the way they're made, but they're very, very disturbing and unsettling. I Stand Alone is like the great Jim Thompson. There's stuff in that movie where Noé captures what Jim Thompson was writing on the page in a way that nobody else has done it. And it's not even a Jim Thompson adaptation. But he does this at the end of I Stand Alone. He does this split narrative where you get the guy's subjective state of mind and what he's objectively doing at the same time. And there's this massive disconnect that explains like this guy's mental psychosis that I've never seen any other filmmaker actually capture on screen. It's absolutely horrifying. And that's another film. This seems to be the theme of this episode. I mean, I Stand Alone is a film that is kind of a noir, as is Irreversible, but they're also horror movies because they just go so far that it's like your stomach can barely stand it. Anyway. Okay, time to retreat back to normal noir. Okay, can I read this one?
Yes, you can.
Read this one? Because this is our last one, and we're going to go out with this because there is no question involved here. This is just from Vivian in Ann Arbor. And Vivian, in response to an earlier question that she did ask about an imaginary version of The Godfather being made at 20th Century Fox during the original noir era, we thought that was a fun notion. So Vivian has cast the film, and Vivian really cast the film, like the entire cast of The Godfather. So we don't have enough time to do, but we'll trim this. And I'll read one, and then you read the next one. Okay. Okay. So and I'm going to do it in reverse order. So I'm going to give the character name first, and then the actor playing the role. So as Don Vito Corleone, she cast Joseph Calleja, which is, of course, brilliant because Coppola actually considered him for the role when he was casting The Godfather. And that's just perfection. Okay.
Okay, and then Michael Corleone, Richard Conte.
Which I think is perfect.
Yeah.
I think Richard Conte is the perfect casting for Michael. Okay, Sonny Corleone, Victor Mature.
Which I think is perfect. I think that is so perfect. You can totally see him as Sonny. It's awesome.
Yeah, the hothead. Victor Mature is playing the hothead. Very good.
Fredo William Eith.
Which I am giving Vivian like super bonus points for this. Because obviously Fredo is the weak brother in the group, and William Eith was like the weak leading man at Fox. When Tyrone Power went off to serve in the war, William Eith came in as his substitute. But he was just a kind of a weak stand-in, which is Fredo completely. So that's great. He's like a weak version of Richard Conte and Victor Mature. So that's absolutely perfect. Okay, I this was very inspired. As Tom Hagen, right, the adopted member of the family, Richard Widmark. That's kind of genius too. You know, she's got the blonde and I get. Now, the thing I love about Widmark's casting that almost makes it better than Robert Duvall in the actual film is that you could see this Tom Hagen about to go off at any moment.
Yeah.
He would see scenes would be so tense with him as the consigliere that it's like, when is he going to go crazy? So I thought that was pretty brilliant casting. I don't know, however, that it would in 1949, Vivian. I don't think Widmark would have been cast in a supporting role in 1949. I think by then he was the star. So this would have had to have been, you know, a massive production, Fox's biggest production of the year, where they could actually get Widmark to play a supporting role in the film.
Okay, and Kay Ann Baxter.
Perfect. I could so see that. Oh my God. Because I could see, because, you know, the Blue Gardenia, she and Conti have a really good chemistry in the Blue Gardenia.
Yeah.
So, you know, the fact that, you know, Kay, you know, ends up marrying Michael, that's like perfect. And I love this one too. Connie, right, the only daughter in the bunch, played by Jean Peters, which I love that. Again, I think that's so perfect because she, you know, and that's a beautiful contrast. Ann Baxter, the kind of, well, obviously blonde. I'm trying to think of the right word to describe Ann Baxter. I was going to say something like virginal and waspish or something, but knowing what I know about the real Ann Baxter, those terms do not apply. So, okay. Your turn now.
Captain McCluskey, Brian Donlevy.
Absolutely perfect. I wanted to say, well, they still could have got Sterling Hayden back then, but he would have been way too young to play Captain McCluskey. But Brian Donlevy is absolutely perfect because it's just like the character he plays in Kiss of Death. You know, I mean, that's just, and the other thing I have to say about this list, and here I'll do the last one. Luca Brasi, Mike Mazurki. Absolutely spot on. And the thing that makes this list so fabulous, Vivian, is that you cast everybody who was at Fox at the time. I mean, those are all Fox contract players. Oh. So you actually, so many people who do this fantasy casting thing just pull from every studio and say, but it's a fantasy, so what? Yeah. But it makes it so much more effective and believable when you realize all these people are at that studio at this time, and they could have all been in this movie.
Yeah.
If Mario Puzo had written it.
At that time. Okay, so you picked the director. This is Vivian. You picked the director, Robert Siodmak or Henry Hathaway.
And again, she does a nice job with this. I, of course, will pick Robert Siodmak to direct everything, although I suspect Henry Hathaway would have gotten this gig because he was a Fox contract director. Although Siodmak did do Cry of the City with Sonny and Michael were both in Cry of the City, but that was a freelance job by Siodmak.
I have to tell you the truth. I would actually pick Henry Hathaway for it.
Because why?
It's really hard to articulate, but I just feel with that story, it feels like, in that kind of a cast, it feels like more Hathaway, even though I really love Robert Siodmak and everything he's done. It's just not the kind of picture I can see him doing.
Valid. That's a valid point. And I'm sure Hathaway would do a really good job with it, you know?
Yeah.
Anyway, that's not going to happen. That's not going to happen. But that sure was fun reading that. It made me think that maybe we should make this like a thing.
Yeah.
You know, where to think, because I started thinking afterwards, like, well, what's another movie from like the 70s or 80s or whatever that you would recast with those classic actors. We did this, of course, in the Noir City magazine when we did the big interview with James Ellroy, where we recast LA Confidential with actually the actors that Ellroy picked, which were Sterling Hayden as come on, what's his name? Why am I drawing a blank on the character that Russell Crowe played? I just can't remember it. Bud White. Yeah. And William Holden as Ed Exley, and Steve Cochran as Jack Vincennes. And then you could have had Veronica Lake, but it doesn't make any sense because she's playing a Veronica Lake lookalike. Yeah. She would have been a lookalike of somebody earlier in the movies. I don't know. But I was thinking, if I was redoing Chinatown, who would I cast in Chinatown? And I thought, you'd have to muss him up a little bit, but I'd cast Alan Ladd. Alan Ladd, to me, is the Jake Gittes character because he's a small guy and he dresses so well to kind of overcompensate. And I could just kind of see Alan Ladd in that role, and maybe Veronica Lake is Evelyn Mulray. Who knows? But I could see the poster. I could definitely see the poster.
Yeah, I would like to see an Edward Arnold playing the John Huston part. Oh, that would have.
Oh yeah, spot on. On. Yeah. The future, Mr. Gitz, the future.
It would make everything else so much worse.
And of course, that version would have been, that would have been Paramount back then. And it's not inconceivable. Maybe John Farrow probably would have directed it. Yeah. But they could have gotten John Huston, could have directed Chinatown back in the day, Anyway, this is very fun. So that we've gone really long, but this was a very fun episode. The lighting has totally changed for me over the course of the time we've been doing this. There was all this sun here, and now everything is different. So you can watch time pass. You can watch Eddie age right there on camera. So that was great, Ann. So thanks, everybody, for the fantastic questions. Keep them coming. Charlotte, thank you very much for your very energetic performance tonight. Best supporting cat Oscar goes to Charlotte. I'm one of these days I'm going to pull Tizzy in here and I'll set her right back here on a little pedestal or something and see what she does. I'm afraid I know what she'd do, and it's not pretty. Okay. So long, everybody.
So long, and thank you, and keep sending in questions. We really appreciate it. And buy
this magazine.
Buy this magazine. Amazon.